All right, we're back at it on the SuccessFlow podcast. We have a seasonal episode today that is a new concept to both of us. When I shot it over, I was like, Steven, have you heard of this? And it's trending around social media, and it's called the winter arc. Expanded the winter arc for improvement, and it's really talking about this season that we're all going through, not just the holidays approaching, but as humans, we're drawn more inside. Maybe not those of us West Coast dwellers, but we're drawn inside, and it's a season to go inward, reflect on the year, to really dial in and say what was achieved this year, where am I at, looking in the mirror in my community, and what needs to be tweaked and updated as we approach a new calendar year. So this winter arc, I heard it popped up from Goggins, and I could not have agreed more with his post and how we feel on the SuccessFlow podcast that we should be thinking about these things all year round, but life gets in the way. It's seasonal with sprints and recovery, like we've been talking about. We can find ourselves in ruts, the peaks and valleys. But this winter arc, I really like the concept of it being seasonal. I think it's natural, like what the conversations you and I have been having with our peers. For sure. And was just, I think it was new to you, but curious on your thoughts on it.
Yeah, very new. I mean, I think the concept isn't new, but the name, winter arc, I wasn't familiar with. And so, when you start doing some research on what this is, it's like, oh, well, we kind of do this stuff and we talk about this stuff a lot, but yeah, it's basically like we're less than 30 days away from the new year. And if you're kind of waiting to start 2025 goals in the new year, you're behind the eight ball, you're behind the game. It's kind of goes into the whole separation season mentality. And so the winter arc is kind of like a good way to reassess, reflect, but then plan and implement and prepare for the new year and start putting in that work in now so you can take the action immediately in January. And so we're doing a lot of that stuff right now in my business. So personally and professionally. So professionally, we're doing a lot of like client feedback survey stuff right now. It's like, what are we doing well? Where are we dropping the ball? And then we're also using it as an opportunity to let them know of additional services, as well as, hey, we grow our business through referral. Do you know any other business owners that may want to use our services? So we're gathering all of this feedback right now throughout this winter arc time period. So that way we can really start building the pipeline for new sales, offering additional services, and fix any potential issues that we could run into without, and we just started this whole like client feedback thing survey. Like, I don't know, it's a simple Google form. Like it's easy to do this stuff. And we just started it a week ago. We got 17 back already. Like the team's pushing it out and doing some really cool things there. So that's one of the things I think when you're planning and assessing in your business, or maybe you're in sales and your pipeline is like gaining feedback from your current customers, or gaining and getting potential referrals from your partners and learning that and really tapping into those relationships that you have, and not going into the new year thinking everything's hunky dory.
Amen. And we're in the same boat, right? Like we're trying to look around corners. There's planning for next year. We've done our performance reviews early, which I like. I mean, even I like it and I don't like it because all the results aren't there from a sales perspective. It's numbers based and those numbers aren't final, but it's helpful to do it now because we're all we're putting a bow on 2024. And as 2025 approaches, this transition period it's uncomfortable, right? Yeah. We're setting new goals. We have the mission's changed a little bit. We're making those tweaks, and we've talked about it from a business perspective, but I found it as well from a personal perspective. I haven't had a coach now for 7 or 8 months, which is the first time I've gone that long without a coach. And as I've been trying to, in my spare time, build out and the coaching clients that I'm working with, I am preparing that as how to coach yourself as one of the benefits. So that was like a big moment I had. I've been texting you about this. Had to go back to the drawing board and spend a couple days like with pen and paper, doing the things that we talk about on this podcast and coaching myself. Been nice to have kind of ChatGPT, quite honestly, to bounce things off of as a coach, and using my own frameworks to figure out how I map to what I set out for this year and just in general, right? I feel like we did a good job of closing the summer out up at Summit I'm looking at the mission statement we put together that you packaged an amazing gift that I don't even think I said thank you for, framing up that mission statement. It's staring at me every day. And I feel like
I didn't do that. That wasn't me. I don't know who it was. Well,
we need to get to the bottom of that because it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I don't think anyone knows. They're a silent assassin. No one's taking credit for it.
Well, I'm going to be calling that out in the group because what a nice token. It's amazing. It's staring at me right now. And just all that together, I just feel like, and the results are already showing. Yeah.
Yeah. I got mine right here as well.
It's huge awesome to just keep front and center.
You got to figure out whose handwriting this is.
That's the forensic investigation has begun.
Exactly.
But back to it again. It's an audit, right? Like it's coming from our industry, and I've been working on some concepts of how it applies to the person. But you've got to audit everything from the financials to the time to the your relationships, all the above. And now is the time to do it, so we can go into the holiday season as present as possible, right? That's the goal. Like, so
and it's time for family. It's time for close relationships, right? In my opinion, there's two types of relationships, both personally and professionally. But in between those, you have casual relationships and you got close relationships. Your casual ones are the ones that are, if they're in your circle, they're rooting for you. They want you to do well, but they're not like, they don't know your deepest, darkest secrets. And maybe not all of your close relationships know your deepest, darkest secrets, but those are the ones that you love the most, your close relationships, right? Those are the ones that you're going to be spending the most time with during this period, this holiday season. Your casual relationships, you don't want to forget about those. Those are the ones that are still in your corner, and you want to, reach out and check in on them and wish them happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas or happy holidays or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely that winter arc. It's a good reminder to be like, ooh, who haven't I reached out to in a while? And let me reach out and touch base. And it's also like, I don't know the statistics on it, but isn't the holidays like some of the most depressing times for people? Like it's really hard.
Suicide rates go up, just elderly natural deaths. And so you've got to be intentional and keep what's important in front of you, which is easier said than done in the VUCA environment that we talk about. And so like just jumping into the winter arc, we've covered a couple of these already, but just wanted to give the listeners a rundown of kind of the key pillars. One is reflection and assessment, right? We're going inward during this season. And then I think everyone's favorite, rest and renewal, probably not getting enough of it from the conversations that I've had. That is what we're supposed to be doing to get ready for the spring season, for those sprints, but rest and renewal is key. Building resilience. I think this goes back like with this winter arc, almost to the Viking times, Northern Hemisphere. The winters are tough. Even in the Midwest, winters are really tough. So the activities that you have to do, chop wood, carry water, prepare, it's that resilience building. And I think this is the fitness mindset too. And why the fitness industry is spreading this so much is that resilience piece, strategic planning, which we've covered from kind of a business perspective, but not only business, for your family and your finances. Right. And then my favorite, inner growth and mastery. I think that's a combination of the first four pillars, and what we're trying to achieve is that inward growth that's a combination of all the above, and mastery, which I think is the goal for most people that have a massive transformative purpose, which we talk about on the pod.
Yeah, no, those are great pillars and good reminders for sure. I think, when you talk about the fitness industry and the nutrition piece, this is another, a time of indulging in abundance and food and drink and celebration and all that. And we had Ben Brown on the pod earlier as a friend, nutritionist, and so I started working with him a while back, and he opens your eyes up into like, you start tracking some foods and like what a high protein diet looks like, and it's like hard to get there sometimes, but you start tracking and like learning about what types of foods get you there. And long story short, he had this, he sent out this email to the group. And it was like this one plate mentality for Thanksgiving. It's like, look, go enjoy yourself. I'm not, the police to say you can't have some fun and enjoy yourself, but put, for food, one plate mentality, like don't go back for seconds. Fill your plate with a ton of protein, turkey, ham, whatever you eat, and have the carbs, have the mashed potatoes, whatever, but that's it. Stop, right? Don't go back for seconds, and that you'll, and take your time eating your food, eat it slower, and you'll feel fuller longer as you're eating. And then also I thought it was a cool idea. So we have this tracker app that we use. And he goes, if you're going to drink alcohol, throw the amount of drinks that you think you want to have in there and see how the calories add up and get a visualization of.
Absolutely. 100%. Let's play devil's advocate here. What most people will say is, oh, it's only one day.
Yeah.
Like, that's just one day. I'm going to pile it on or whatever. But now we get back to second order consequences. This is supposed to be your stretch to kind of rest up this weekend. How's Friday going to look? If you're carved up food and maybe booze hangover likely, then it's okay. We've got 3 weeks till Christmas. These 3 weeks don't matter. And that's next thing you know, you put on some weight, your energy's low. And then how's your strategic planning look? It's how does all this fit together? Which again, this is easier said than done, but it's all about intention. Like what's your intention? What's the biggest thing that's important to you, and do your actions align with it?
Yeah. I mean, when you have the clarity in your mind and you have, and you're feeling good, that's when that strategic planning, really takes off. But if you're feeling sluggish and you're just exhausted because you're not taking care of yourself during this time, you're not going to want to sit down and, put together some plans and prep for next year. So I think that's where it starts. Yeah. I mean, that's where a lot of, my own personal journey started was, 2 years ago, kicking off dry January. And then I was like, dang, we're clear. We're laser focused. I've never been motivated. And it was natural. There's no other, it was just ridding, some things that, I was putting in my body, and by eliminating those things, I feel like a superhero, and you're unstoppable. And then it just snowballs from there. So, challenge yourself. I think that's something to remind too during this period, this winter arc period, is challenging yourself with some habits that you currently have and trying to stop, those. If you can stop them now during this time, then you're going to be able to do it no problem going into next year when there isn't the big celebrations and the holidays and all that stuff. Right. But also give yourself grace, right? Like you can cold turkey on some things are challenging, no pun intended, with the Thanksgiving holiday, but you can do dry January, and that's cold turkey, like no booze for 30 days. But if you slow go and just change your relationship with alcohol and just kind of minimize the intake, then that's a start. And then, that leads you into maybe if you want to go for dry January, it's a little bit easier for you. But I think nutrition and all that stuff, that's one of the biggest things you can think about to get that clarity, so you can put it in that work, that prep work as you assess. And, I think, do you do this every year? Do you look at your goals that you set forth for last year? I don't necessarily think goals have to be limited to a calendar year. It's kind of 12-month periods, and then you back into quarterly and whatever. They're kind of always ongoing. But do you assess where you're at and where you thought you'd be a year from now, and then pivot from there? Is that kind of what you use for a baseline, or how do you attack that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like it tends to be a quarterly assessment, and that's why I like this idea about the winter arc, is because we're just such seasonal humans, and the quarters somewhat work out to that. But if you get into kind of you go deep down the rabbit hole on this stuff, you start talking about the Gregorian calendar and how we map to 12 months. It is wild. It's just math that was brought up by Roman emperors that literally decided, and you can even see it with the counts on the days. Like if you look at Augustus versus, I forget the day count, but one emperor jumped himself so he would have more days than a previous emperor and swapped it. It's really interesting. But if you start looking at the seasons, and even from a micro perspective, looking at the day, mapping the circadian rhythm with the seasons, going to bed a little earlier based on season, it's super interesting. But to your question, it tends to be quarterly for me, just because of the business aspect. And when I'm able to book the rest and vacation time, it does tend to be quarterly. And to your point, we got to be doing this more than just in the winter. This isn't annual New Year's resolution stuff, though those are good. That's only one portion of the year. So it's back to pen and paper, documenting it somewhere, whether it's Apple Notes, handwritten, Google Docs, wherever you're putting it, you've got to get it out of your head, because time will just sneak up on you if you keep it between your ears.
Yeah, I agree. Where did you hear about this winter arc thing? How did you come up with, or where'd you see it? You said you saw it in the fitness world. Were you following somebody, or where did it come from?
It was a Goggins post.
Goggins, that's what you said. Okay.
I'll do my best impression. He said, Mother Effer's been talking to me about Goggins, you in the winter arc. And I said, this isn't a winter arc. This is 365. But and so I'm like, what is this winter's arc thing? That's how it started. And then I saw Gymshark had a whole campaign on it, and it's apparently a viral TikTok thing. I'm not on TikTok, but it's positive, right? I agree with Goggins, but let's get it straight. Goggins is in a fraction of a 1% of human beings. So the winter arc is a great step toward the lifestyle improvements we're trying to make more consistent.
Yeah, Goggins is an animal, dude. Like, and for him to like look at these as seasons, I mean, he's kind of like his season is just full speed ahead, take no prisoners, which is intense. But yeah, okay. So it was a post that he put out.
I got a question for you, and this might be a softball, but I'm really curious. Why do you think that we struggle with rest and recovery so much? Like that pillar seems to elude most of us. And not talking about like Netflix and a glass of wine, but like, why do we really struggle to rest and recover?
FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, if you know something's going on, you want to be around, you want to do it. I also think that, for me personally, it's hard for me to shut my mind down. Like I'm always just running around with like throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, like just coming up with ideas and what can I create? What can I do? And it's hard to shut that down sometimes when your mind's racing. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I work on quite a bit more recently, is being more present, just being in the moment and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's, rest and relaxation. I think it's probably almost a guilty feeling, like you're not doing anything. And you feel like, well, if I'm just laying here, or if I'm just spending an extra hour in bed resting, or if I'm, not doing anything, and it's not even about sleeping, it's about being in the moment. Maybe you're doing some more mental health work and all that kind of stuff, but you're not doing anything active like with your body, but you really are, right? I mean, you're actively sleeping, you're actively, you're shutting your brain down to be able to recharge and refresh so you can be stronger. But if you're not out there working out, or you're not out there generating new sales, or if you're not out there developing relationships or whatever, and you're really focused on yourself and resting more, I feel like sometimes you feel guilty about that, and it's selfish. And so it just goes back to, putting the oxygen mask on first and realizing that you need that in order to be your best self when you are in front of other people and you're trying to do and achieve the goals that you want. So I would say it's a little bit of FOMO, a little bit of guilt, and feeling like that you're just, I don't know, you're not quite living up to you're not giving maximum effort when you're focused on rest. But in turn you are. It's a strange, it's kind of like it's just the opposite thinking, but it works in your favor.
Yeah, I've seen it creep in for me in my sanctuary. Shout out to Reset, Uptown specifically. But like, that's supposed to be my sanctuary. It's the whole premise in the word reset. I go in, it's supposed to be shut off. But lately, I'm on Slack or doing emails in the sauna. Yeah. And I'll be like, the heat will get up. I'll be 7 minutes into the sauna. What are you doing? Like, this is not the place for this. And it just kind of creeps in. And when Eric came into town from St. Louis, he just was so in the moment, like relaxing in the compression, the sauna, just eyes closed. You can't check email in the cold plunge, but it was just cool to see that. Like he was really in that moment of rest and relaxation, and something that I have to continually monitor too. Just food.
Well, yeah, you can't multitask when you're trying to rest and relax. Like it's a singular focus of literally that's the purpose. And that's not like saying it's 3 hours later. It's 20 minutes, right? 30 minutes, you can get the same effects. But it is hard for, especially for, guys like us that are always on the go and always trying to build and create, and, things don't really slow down. It's hard to put yourself in that position to force yourself to slow down. And I think that's why you benefit so much for Reset, because it's a physical location you can walk into and dedicate that time. It's like, once you walk in, I'm not, it's just reminding yourself I'm not touching anything until I walk out these doors, and I'm just focused on, was it the compression sauna and cold plunge that they have there?
What are some of the winter moments for you that you've experienced that have really triggered growth? I know that the holidays have changed for you over the years between going up to Flag, and not sure if you're still doing that for Thanksgiving, but what are some of the things in winter that have really hit home for you that have triggered like plans for the next year, or just a look in the mirror?
I think it's just getting started early. I mean, I used to start and my birthday's in January. So I always looked at like the new year's like after my birthday. Like if I was going to have any sort of goals, like, I'll start after that, and again, we're not necessarily looking at goals being a calendar year. But I think the last couple of years it's changed to start the planning and preparation now. And, from a personal, setting, but from a family setting, yeah, we've made some changes on who, family that we're around and, who we, spend the time with. And I think can be tough for a lot of people, but it's also important. It's like, who do you want to spend the holidays with? And, who's going to bring the best out of you and who's going to bring the positivity. And yeah, we would go to Thanksgiving every year for Thanksgiving, or Flagstaff every year for Thanksgiving. That all kind of changed, especially as we all got older and started having families and stuff, and, kids got into the picture and all that stuff. Everything changed. From hanging out with cousins and that kind of thing. But, as my family's pretty large and, likes to have a good time. But I think the hardest part is like, when you have your own family, you got to split up holidays and do all that kind of thing. But you get together throughout the months and go see some lights or go do some fun things. This year we're going to Rawhide, I think. And this year will be different though. Did I tell you that Kim and her mom are going to Germany for 10 days in December?
I remember that being a potential plan, but I didn't know that it was solidified.
Yeah. So it's solo dad time, and it's not like anything's different. Like kids are full blown school, Jack's going to still have his baseball. It's not anything like it's not a problem for me. But 10 days will be the longest stretch. And it'll just be a little bit different, for that 10 days in the middle of December when we do a lot of holiday stuff as a family, just walking around the block and checking out lights and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be doing that a little bit earlier, and then, she'll get back right before Christmas, which is interesting because our credit card bills are going up a little bit more sooner because she's doing all the Christmas shopping now.
As they do this year. Absolutely.
That's another thing to look at too, is just personal finances, right? Like I know this is a year where people tend to spend a little bit more as they are in the season of giving and gift giving and all that stuff. But, I actually manage our personal finances through QuickBooks, and and it's just kind of see where you're putting your money. And it helps with the budgeting perspective. And so you can kind of get a good picture. Okay, what did I do this quarter, last quarter, and all that? Obviously I do it for my business, no problem, all the time. Like you have to. You look at your profit and loss and all that stuff. So it's like, well, why don't we do this for ourselves personally? Why don't we have a tracker for this so we can see where we're putting our funds and, what's working, what's not. And if we're like overspending in a certain area, can we dial that back? And it's just a great way to. So I'll be spending a lot of December looking at the full year picture, and based on the income that we're bringing in and what we're spending, so we can kind of dial that back, and then having discussions as a family around it. I think those are some big things that we're working on.
Absolutely. That's back to the work-life integration that we talk about. Like we're the same way. We probably have some work to do on the finances because that's just kind of worked for our relationship, but the calendar, I think bringing that portion of business into our relationship was such a fundamental game changer. I created a monster with Paula on the calendar. If it's on the calendar, it doesn't exist, just like business. And when you're running that way and there's that consistency, it just helps to map for peace of mind, bringing those businesses practice into your personal life. And then from a relationship perspective, the intention and consideration, bringing that into business, that's the beautiful harmony we're talking about. And again, I'll say, easier said than done. And it just incrementally changes. You start making these little pivots and it's like, man, how did we not do it this way before? So that's an awesome nugget there.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this episode, what's your overall take now that you've done a little bit of a deeper dive into the winter arc and, kind of the seasons? Like what would you, for someone who's never really done this and has kind of listened to this concept for the first time, what advice would you give them? Well,
I'm glad that how you kicked us off and said, we kind of knew this stuff, but this was a fun deep dive. What I love about this podcast is I didn't realize it's a paradox, right? I think that's the challenging part is you've got this paradox of strategic finishing out 24, hustle, while we're trying to keep in mind rest and relaxation, family, relationships, integration. And that's the paradox that there's no right answer. And you have to find a way to make the puzzle pieces fit in those two areas in this winter arc. And I think that's why just taking a deep look as you're on this path of defining success for yourself, what does that balance look like for you? and making sure it's not too weighted in one area or the other. It's integrated like we talk about. I think that's my biggest takeaway. How about you?
Yeah, same. I mean, it's just continuing down the path, and what we've been able to gain clarity about what we want and how to get there, and it's just remaining patient, and it's just it's just continuing to put in the work to get there. But if you're doing this for the first time, the first step is, I think, putting the oxygen mask on, focusing on your health, focusing on your nutrition, focusing on your activity levels and getting your body right, and then start identifying what it is that you truly want in the next year and 3 years, and what are your lofty goals, and then building targets from that and putting that work in now in the next 30 days, as opposed to waiting until next year. Because then now you're kind of just, as we said, you're a little bit too late in the game for 2025. And so it's just putting in that prep work and just carving out quality time for yourself for that rest and relaxation, but also quality time for yourself to put in that prep work and really identify where does you want to go and gain clarity around that. So if opportunities come your way that don't align with those goals, you can say no. And just like, this is not the path that I'm on. And it gives you a better, stronger foundation for you to land on to avoid that chaos. If you're kind of living in that chaos where you're saying yes to everything because you're not really sure where to go. And so you're like, oh, I'm just gonna try this and try this, try this. And maybe that makes sense. A lot of times it makes sense when you're, younger and maybe just coming out of college and so trying to figure it out and you're early to mid 20s or whatever. But if you're, getting it up there in the middle age and late 30s, 40s, 50s, you're maybe still trying to figure it out, but you should have a better idea of where it is that you want to go and what you want to do. And so spend some time defining that. So that way you can avoid that chaos, but also eliminate the stagnation, right? Of not knowing what to do. So you're not doing anything. So I think spending the next 30 days leveraging this winter arc concept of that rest and relaxation and purposeful, mindful work for preparation of what you want is what's absolutely key. Which is, not well some said. Things that, quite honestly, I wasn't doing more than a couple of years ago. This is all still fairly new.
Absolutely. Kind
of an idea, is where you wanted to go or what you want to do, but it wasn't very clear until you really put pen to paper and start working on it.
It's that midlife, that midlife awearness we're getting. Those,
I know.
Those really,
it's right when you start thinking about what you want the rest of your life to look like. You're like, oh shit, like I'm like on the, we're at the peaks. That's why they call 40 over hill, right? But if we're talking about longevity, we're not quite 50, up top of the hill.
50's over the hill, man.
I'd say that's what I was saying. I think it's
I'm giving it till 50.
Yeah.
I love it. Listeners, let us know what you're doing for the winter arc. Hopefully this sparks something that you can take a look in the mirror. Let us know what practices you're putting in place to go inward and gear up for a great 2025. We'll be back at you next week, and thanks for tuning in.